Okay, good morning to everybody. I will start sharing my presentation. I hope you can see my presentation now.
Yes.
Just going to put it in.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. So, as Caroline said, I'm a veterinarian doctor. I worked in practice during 17 years in the Flanders region in mainly dairy beef. And then since 2008, I work as a consultant advisor for the Animal Health Center, Flanders, in where we do a lot of project in cooperation with University of Ghent. So in that work, it was when I together with my colleagues developed this tool, metabolic scanning, which is a tool that's now running for several years in Flanders, which was introduced also in Wallonia in 2023. And it has been proven a very good tool for dairy farmers and their vets to make a risk evaluation on transition period and metabolic diseases on dairy farms. So the idea was now in the coming 40 minutes, 45 minutes to give you an introduction of what we can do with that metabolic scan. Um, but first, I want to give an introduction why this tool can be so important. When we look at dairy farming these days, and I think this counts for all European countries where dairy farmers are operating. That's namely the key question for dairy farmers. How can I be able to continue milking cows, gain money, and at the same time answer to all the society and social requirements on climate issues, biodiversity, sustainability. So it's about the license to operate, to produce, and to compete in this society surroundings. When we look at that license, there are two key factors. The first one is obvious. When the farmer doesn't gain money anymore, when he doesn't have good economic revenues anymore, it stops. So he needs to have economic revenues to continue, and economic revenues, they are very high related to the longevity of his cows. And longevity is all about improving animal health and welfare. And to improve animal health and welfare, you need to have your key figures in picture. The second thing that is very important is to keep connected with society, with citizens, consumers, politics, and to develop, that climate neutral in a climate neutral way, and also have attention for preserving biodiversity and the environment. And I often have comments from farmers which tell me that it is not possible to gain money and at the same time look at all those things they ask us about climate issues. So the question is, are climate and economic objectives compatible? Well, the answer is clear. The answer is yes. Even if the farmer only gives his attention to the economic value of his farm, so he gives his attention to animal welfare, animal health, meaning good udder health, good claw health, good immunity, good fertility, and good management on feeding, nutrition, and production, he will be able to increase his longevity and at the same time increase his economic value. And what will happen by doing that, just by giving his attention to increase his economic value, at the same time, he will decrease his carbon footprint. And in that way, get his acceptance by society and his license to continue producing. I will explain this a little bit further. So when we look at average production productive life of a dairy cow, that means the life when the cow produces milk, starting from the day it calves for the first time until the day it leaves the farm for slaughtering or for fattening unit. So when we look at the average productive life in our world or worldwide, we see that's and on average 2.5 years. It's even less in the United States. In Belgium and the Netherlands, we do a little bit better, 3.5 years. But when we look at the 1% best dairy farmers in Belgium and the Netherlands, they obtain 5 years of productive life on average for their dairy cows. Those are the dairy farmers who have a lot of 100,000 liter cows in their stable. Those are farmers who are able to manage a very good transition, that are able to keep cows for several lactations without getting them sick because of high udder health, high metabolic health, high claw health, and further on. When I ask the question to many farmers, what is the most efficient lactation number for a dairy cow? They often answer me, it is the third lactation, which is the most efficient. The most efficient, that means the lactation where the cow gives the most milk with the less effort, less cost. And in reality, it is not the third lactation, it's about the fifth and the sixth lactation, when that cow gives milk in the most efficient way. When we look at our farms and we look at the amount of cows that reach the fifth, sixth, and seventh lactation, that is a rather low number. So there is still some work to do on that level. If we put ourselves the question, what if we could double the average productive life of a cow from 2.5 to 5 years? So for any given farm, what would this give us? In the first time, you need only the half of the young stock you need for replacement. This can save you a lot of money, because young stock costs a lot of money to manage, to breed, and further on. At the same time, you will be able to lower the age of first calving with 3 to 4 months, because we know that cows that calve the first time earlier, that means around 23, 24 months, or when they calve at that moment, they will generally live longer than cows that calve on 27, 28 months. At the same time, you gain 4 months on that cow on production time. Nutritional efficiency will go from 1.2 to 1.5 liters milk per kilogram daily dry matter intake per day. So also there you will gain a lot of money. And at the same time, without doing anything else, you will get a reduction in methane emission of 32%. And as I said in the beginning, you will, as a dairy farmer, can be able to reduce your carbon footprint and get that social acceptance. So, longevity of cows. I come a lot of times on dairy farms for guidance, for helping them on production problems, on fertility problems, and so on. And when you do cow farm visits and you look at the cows and you look at the stable and the management, then images speak for themselves. Just by looking at them, you can say if on this farm cows will live long or not long. Because when you see this picture, a lot of times you know for sure that these cows on these farms won't last a long time. They're all looking at me and saying, "Where is my food?" And the food is not coming. Same time in these pictures, when there is no food or the food is not adequate to their production levels, then you're going to get less production, of course, but also cows that won't live a long time. Water and the possibility of drinking. You see here this cow just calved, and we know that this cow, the first day of calving, she needs between 100 and 150 liters of water, and she needs to get this from this little green nipple with a very low flow rate. She won't be able to get it. The other picture is about a milking, a water trough where they can drink, but it's very important also to keep that water trough very clean, because when there is dirt in it, cows will drink less. Farms with a lot of hypocalcemia, even subclinically, these farms won't be able to have cows that live a long time. Stress levels in farms. When you look at this picture, a rather big farm with a robotic system for milking, you see there is a lot of stress in this farm. A lot of cows are up, not laying down, doing perching, looking up, standing, doing nothing. Then you know there is a problem in this farm and cows won't get up to the 5th lactation. Here, picture of dry cows. Also here, a lot of stress symptoms. Too less cubicles, too less places to eat, too less drinking troughs, which gives a lot of stress for these cows. They cannot lay down. They're just standing up and looking. You know that these cows will have problems on longevity. When you see on farms a lot of cows with these problems, heel lesions or other lesions on the body, there must be a comfort problem at that farm. And you know when there's comfort problem and you see a lot of cows with this kind of lesions, these cows won't last more than 3 to 4 lactations on maximum. So longevity, it's related to a lot of things, but it's obviously very hard related to a management of optimal transition. And transition is, you can say, the Achilles tendon in managing high-yielding dairy farms. When you get your transition period right, you're going to be able to manage the rest also very good. When we look at the lactation curve of an average dairy cow, it's something that is very clear and known by most of people working in the sector. But it's obvious where the period of high risk is. So we see here the thin light blue line with the lactation curve. After calving, the cow starts producing and gets to a high level within about 50 to 60 days, and she will continue giving milk during a large period and slowly decreasing towards 300 days. But in those first 60 to 70 days, we know that the energy needs and the energy intake, they are not aligned. So she needs more energy than she takes in. That means she gets in a negative energy balance. And this negative energy balance, the blue colored space here on the graph, she tries to compensate this with mobilization of body fat and body proteins to maintain an equilibrium. And that is very important for that dairy cow, that she can maintain that equilibrium during that whole period of early lactation. And the way she can manage this equilibrium will be very highly dependent on how she was managed during the whole lactation period. So managing transition, it's all about managing optimal absorption of energy and proteins before and after calving. It's managing an optimal immunity and fertility, and it's managing optimal household and micro minerals. So when we look at transition period, we can say that the small transition period starts about 3 weeks before calving and ends about 3 weeks after calving. But transition period and managing of transition period is much broader than that. The management of a good transition period starts already in the last stage of the previous lactation, just before drying off, about 8 weeks before calving. So that cow has just run a marathon, and she needs to get some rest after that. After she run that marathon, this is what we can call the far off period, the first period in after drying off. And slowly but surely she comes in a period when she has to prepare herself to run another marathon. So she's coming in closer period, and then you have that moment, calving moment, where lactation starts, a very important moment. And this is just after lactation, where you can already see in clinical signs if there is in the beginning of that transition period something that was going wrong and now is evolving to clinical symptoms, to symptoms or problems which can be related to a not adequate transition period. And those symptoms we all know, it's about milk fever, it's all about ketosis, it's about displaced abomasum, it's retaining placenta, mastitis, metritis. It's fertility problems like low conception rate, unsuccessful insemination, long open period. It's all about fatty liver syndrome that can happen. It's about problems on the level of the rumen, and it's about early culling of the cow. So to manage this transition period, it starts mainly at the end of the previous lactation to look at optimization of the ration at the end of the previous lactation, the optimization of the ration in the far off period, the period where she takes the rest for her previous marathon, but also attention for optimization of the ration in the closer period when she prepares herself for the new marathon. So it is a complex period where there are a lot of things on different levels to be managed. So when we want to manage this transition period, it is important to have some figures, key numbers, and to do a prediction of will it be going good or will it be rather going bad. So can we do a risk analysis to have a better transition management? And then we have to look at our figures that we have. So what data do we have? What information do we already have? And can we obtain extra information that can help us to manage better transition? So what can we manage and do we have tools for that? And some years ago, a lot of farmers and also a lot of vets, they asked me, can't we use blood samples to measure interesting parameters which can give us interesting information on the risks, on what can happen in transition period. So first of all, let's look at what the data are that we already have. So we can look at management of dry cows. How is the drying off therapy? Is that managed well, or are there things that can be better? What is the length of the dry period? Vaccinations, parasite management in case of pasture, production levels at the end of previous lactation. All those things we can look at. We can look at the cows, body condition score, hygiene, stress factors in the cows. We can look at the housing of the cows. Level of occupation. Is the occupation too high? Are there enough cubicles, enough eating places? And are the mattresses in the cubicles, are they good? And do they not give some lesion problems in the cows? We can look at duration. Is duration at end of lactation in the far off and closer period, is it good? Is there a good administration on energy and proteins? What about minerals for dry cows and cows in early production? Are they adequate? What about antioxidants in duration? What about drinking water? Is the drinking water of good quality? And maybe still more important, is there a good disponibility of drinking water? Are there enough drinking troughs for the amount of cows who are in the herd? How is the feeding management? Are they feeding once a day, twice a day, every 48 hours, every 36 hours, or so on? How is the management of roughage production and storages in the silo? Also, that is very important. In Flanders, we have something like milk production registration, where we can obtain a lot of data on cows, on fat, protein, on ureum, and so on. I think this exists also in other countries and so on. So also from there, you can get a lot of extra data and information. Individual cow testing can give also extra information. That is mainly on individual level and mainly on cows that are on the limits on having clinical problems, but they are useful. Cow sensors. That's a story apart, where we're not going to talk about deeply today, but nowadays cow sensors are very in, and a lot of farms use them. I just give here some pictures of sensors from GEA. I'm not related to GEA, but just to give an example. But also these sensors, they give information on mainly individual level, but not on high herd level. So let's get back to the question, can we do something with blood samples, and can we collect data on a herd level by using blood samples? And there was an investigator, Professor von Zaun from Penn State University in America, who did a lot of research on this on the subject, and he developed an application and formula to use as a herd screening tool. So he started from pooled sample metabolic profiling to give information on herd level, on metabolic statuses of the herd. So what's the idea behind it? In blood, we can measure several biochemical markers, and we know that these biochemical markers in the blood, that by looking at them, by measuring them, we can get an idea of a metabolic response caused by any stress situation. And this response of those biochemical markers can oscillate according to the accumulation of stress factors. And that's a bit the idea behind it. So when we look at metabolic diseases around calving that occur, they are mainly due to the cow's incompetence to coordinate an equilibrium, to coordinate a stable balance between fat metabolism, glucose metabolism, protein and mineral metabolism. And all these kind of metabolisms we can get an idea of by measuring biochemical markers in the blood. So for instance, for energetic metabolism, we can measure NIFAS, we can measure the BHB and the beta hydroxybutyrate. We can measure total proteins, ureum, albumin for protein metabolism. We can measure the same, but also alpha, beta, gamma globulins, vitamin E, vitamin A, beta carotene, oligoelements just as selenium, copper, and zinc to get an idea on inflammation status, on immunity status, on fertility status. Calcium, phosphor, magnesium, about mineral metabolism and liver functions. Yeah, we can measure bilirubin, AST, NIFAS, GGT, and so on. All markers that we can measure in the serum, the blood serum, which can give us an idea on all those functions. So what did von Zaun do in his work? Well, he developed a formula in which he can use a pooled sample to give an evaluation of metabolic status. So where he starts from the idea, when you measure something, a biochemical marker in the blood, you have a result, and you compare that result with a reference value which has a minimum and a maximum. So when the result of the analysis of that marker is between a minimum and maximum for an individual cow, we can say that that cow is in normal condition for that particular individual biomarker. But now we're going to use pooled samples. That means that we're going to use a sample that is coming not from an individual cow, but from a herd, from a group of cows. So we cannot compare a result of a pooled sample with the normal reference values for that given biomarker. So we need to develop for every biomarker a kind of reference population. And a reference population is actually a population where 95% of the individual animals within this population are between the minimum and maximum of a given biomarker in the serum. So it's about two standard deviations to the right and two standard deviations to the left of the median of this reference range. And this is the reference population that von Zoon developed for any given tested biomarker. The red curve is the tested population. This is the tested population of which we have a pooled sample. So the median of this population is actually the tested result of our pooled sample. And what are we going to do? We're going to compare this with the reference population with a formula. And this formula is not more, not less than looking at the median health minus the pool value divided by the standard deviation of the healthy reference population. So this gives us an estimated percentage of abnormal values within the pool. That means that we can get an estimation of how many animals can be in problem within a tested population. So what did we do in DGZ, the Animal Health Center Flanders? We looked at it a little bit further and tried to develop it into a tool which is useful in daily practice for dairy farmers and their practitioners. So this is the idea. Every tested population you're going to compare with the reference population, which is here the yellow curve. And it is about the distance between the median of the tested population, which is your result of your sample, which it's important to give an estimation on percentages of animals which are below the minimum or above the maximum of this tested metabolic marker. So what did we do in practice? We advise farmers and their vets to sample 15 animals in total to give a good impression of metabolic status around transition. So that means that we are going to let them test 5 cows in the close-up group. These are cows 21 to maximum 3 days before calving, 5 cows in the fresh group, 3 to 28 days in production, and also 5 cows in the peak lactation group, 60 to 120 days in lactation. So we have 15 samples from 3 lactation groups. These 15 samples will be pooled per 5 cows per group in the laboratory. And these pool samples will be analyzed for 21 biochemical markers. And for those 21 biochemical markers, we will calculate the abnormal values. So the percentage of abnormal values for any tested marker. Then we're going to group those 21 markers into 8 metabolic risk points of interest. And then for those 8 groups. I'm sorry, that was the wrong way. We are again going to calculate the percentage of abnormal values for each group, risk group, and put this into a web diagram which looks like this. So this is the metabolic scan of a herd. It gives rather directly a picture of all your groups. In this example, 4 groups, 4 lactation groups are sampled. Yeah, it's not all translated. Some things are still in French. So you have the dry cows, you have the fresh cows, you have the peak lactation cows, but you have also heifers that were tested. So the groups, the metabolic groups here are ketosis, negative energy balance, water intake, liver health, copper, zinc, macrominerals, which are calcium, magnesium, phosphor, the antioxidants, which are selenium, vitamin E, and beta carotene, uh, inflammation status, and dry matter intake. And so you can see for every tested group the estimation of animals which are at risk. So for instance, here in the red line, the fresh cows, about 55% of those fresh cows will be having, or as it is an estimation, of course, but can be having problems on ketosis. That doesn't have to be any clinical form of ketosis, but these cows have problems on dealing with their negative energy balance, which can relate to lower production rates. So every risk group you can evaluate. It's a rather high level risk analysis on metabolic health of a herd. So which animals to choose for sampling? Well, you need to put first the question, which groups do we want to test? So as I said, we advise to test 3 groups at least to have a good idea on transition period. So the close-up group, the fresh cows and peak lactation cows, but you can test also other groups like dry cows and far off, the calved heifers, young stock, and so on. Regarding that, you have the good reference populations of that groups, and that you don't mix within the groups. For instance, fresh cows and a group of fresh cows, you don't mix them with just calved heifers. You make from calved heifers a different group. We advise, just as Van Zaun also suggests, to take minimum of 5 animals per group. And then it's very important which animals in that group you need to select. Well, it's very important to choose animals that are in good clinical health and not close to calving. They need to be in good clinical health, because when you choose animals that are clinically not right, then your pool sample result will not be giving a good image of your herd. And it's going to be rather estimated too high or too low for some biochemical markers. So it's very important to not to take animals with mastitis, with metritis, animals who just suffered from milk fever, animals who have claw problems, and so on. So you need to take 5 clinically healthy animals that are representative for the farm and for the herd you wish to scan. So what are the possibilities of this metabolic scan? You can estimate with it the prevalence of metabolic pathologies after calving. You can try to explain a decline in performance of cows. You can draw attention to an existing existing imbalance and check the analysis results with the findings in the herds and propose also solutions to the farmer on the level of, for instance, the ration, but also the management of the ration and environmental factors, and the management of transition in general. That can be looking at the water troughs, installing more water troughs, looking at the cubicles, dealing with overpopulation, giving more comfort to the cows, and so on. So what we can use it also for is to control the efficacy of the taken measures. So when we should take a metabolic scan today on a farm and we see a lot of risks on whatever levels, we can give some action points to the farmer to resolve this, and we arrange to do a new metabolic scan in 6 months after he has taken some measurements to improvement, so we can measure it after 6 months in a new metabolic scan, just to see if the risks are still there or they are disappeared. So metabolic scan is not a diagnostic tool. That means it's not a tool to start a therapy on an individual cow or a group of cows. The metabolic scan is a risk analysis tool that works on herd level and gives a lot of information to deal with management problems on the herd. So when we compare possibilities and limits of this metabolic scan, well, possibilities, you can test 21 biochemical markers in one sample. You can test different groups in a dairy farm. It's very important that when you work with this pool sampling, that you can reduce enormously the analysis costs for the farmer. For instance, when you have to analyze 21 markers in 15 animals or in 15 blood samples, it will cost about 4,000 euros. When you do it in 3 pooled samples, it'll cost about 400 euros. So that's a big difference for the farmer. It gives a good and far complete and dynamic image on risks in transition period. The interpretation is rather simple, but you do it best in cooperation with the practitioner, the veterinarian practitioner, because he will be taking the blood samples and he will help the farmer to give a good interpretation and a good advice. So what are the limits? Well, it is not a tool that replaces other tools. It's a tool amongst others that gives extra information. It will not replace sensors. It will not replace milk registration data, but this gives an overall herd risk analysis. And when we see in Flanders region where we launched it 5 years ago, it's still increasing in use, and a lot of farmers are using it every 6 months as a routine measurement. It's very important that the interpretation of the results is always done in relation to inspection of the herd, inspection of the cow, of body condition score, other data on ration analysis, and so on. It's not an integrated image on relationships between different biochemical markers. It gives an indication of risk on herd level and not a relationship with an underlying cause. So causes, when you find a risk with this metabolic scan, you need to search for the causes which develop this risk. It is also a tool which is only possible on rather bigger herds from minimum 80 animals in production. And it's very crucial to have a good selection of the right animals. I already emphasized that it's important that you choose the animals right, that they're in good clinical health, and that they are within the group that you want to test. And another thing that is very important, that it's mainly for those who deal with the blood samples. That means the ones who take the blood samples, the ones who send in the blood samples, and the ones who analyze the blood samples. Hemolysis rate has a big influence on the pool result. That means it's very important to avoid hemolysis in that blood sample as much as possible. That means that the blood has to be taken in a very good way on animals which are not stressed, that the blood has to go as quickly as possible to the lab, let's say maximum within 48 hours, and that it is in those 48 hours that it is good cooled in the refrigerator, and that it can be analyzed as soon as possible. So to end, I want to give some general results on metabolic scans performed on 305 Flemish dairy herds. This is a presentation we presented on the World Bariatrics Congress in Madrid in 22, I think it was. So we looked at all the results of 305 Flemish dairy farms for several risk factors. So these are the risk factors: ketosis, negative energy balance, and liver function. So the percentages you see in these grams are the percentages of dairy farms, and the colors they give an idea of how the cows are doing. So the red ones is that these are farms where about 0 to 60% of all cows are in risk. The orange ones is about 62 40 to 20%, and then the green ones, they are the farms where the risk levels are lowest, and where only 20% of the cows are at risk. So what can we learn here? That in those 305 Flemish dairy farms in the group close up, that about, and when we take the 25 in red and the 22 in orange together, let's say about 47% of these farms have close-up cows at risk for ketosis, negative energy balance. When we look at the fresh cows, 35 plus those 23.4%, then we see a lot of farms with fresh cows at risk for ketosis. I think this is also very normal and expected. We see more farms with low risks in the group of the peak lactation. And that is also normal. The most problems on ketosis, negative energy balance, we can see in the fresh cows. But this gives us also here the image that the problems on negative energy balance mainly starting in drying off and in not good managing of transition period. Liver function, mainly in the dry cows. We see in these 305 farms a lot of cows, a lot of farms with a lot of cows in risk. To a smaller extent, we see it in the fresh cows, and even smaller in peak lactation. So liver function and fatty liver symptoms or problems is something that they take over from one lactation to another. And when cows are dried off and they have a bad liver coming from a previous lactation, they will have new problems in a new lactation. Results on inflammation and antioxidant status. So inflammation, this is also expected that there are a lot of farms that have cows at risk on inflammation around just after calving, and this is due to metritis, mastitis, retaining placenta, and so on. But we see it also in dry off, in close up period. This is something that is mainly related to comfort problems. Dry off cows are mainly housed in pens that are not adequate on comfort in a lot of Flemish cows. So these high rates on inflammation are mainly due to claw problems and all kind of lesions they can get by a bad comfort when they are housed in the dry off pen. Antioxidant status, also here we can see that a lot of farms have a lot of cows in risk in the close-up group. That means that antioxidant administration for dry cows is let's say an important interest of improvement on a lot of farms. And we see that those low antioxidant statuses they take with them when they have just calved. It's getting better into peak lactation, but they need those antioxidants just after calving, and they don't have any reserve when they come out of dry off period. Water intake, dry matter intake. Also here we see the most farms with the most animals at risk in close-up period. And that is what we see also in practice when we do farm visits, that there are not enough drinking troughs, or the drinking troughs are not big enough in the pens where the dry cows are housed. It's too, also in the lactation groups, fresh and peak lactation, are there still too many farms, I think, where, drinking water intake should be better. And dry matter intake also here, we see a lot of farms in the group of 305 with a lot of cows at risk in close-up period and in the fresh group. So when dry matter intake and close-up period is not adequate, it won't be adequate in the fresh group, and that negative energy balance problems will be getting higher in the fresh cows when dry matter intake is not good enough or high enough to deal with that equilibrium on energy output and energy intake. So in conclusion, we can say that the metabolic scan is a very useful support tool for taking a general metabolic picture of a dairy herd and to identify risks on a herd level. The tool supports the use of pooled samples, provided that the basic conditions are respected. That means that you select the right cows, clinically healthy, and you avoid as much as possible hemolysis in the blood samples, and then you can be able to do a good interpretation and have good results on to identify a risk on herd level. So the tool is very practical, mainly for collecting data on transition periods on farms where there are no other data available. Not all farms in Belgium have sensors or have milk production registration data. But also on the farms which have that data, the tool provides valuable extra data, and it supports also to launch the debate between the advisor, veterinarian, or the nutritionist, and the dairy farmer himself. But I must say, this is a tool that is specially developed for veterinarian dairy practitioners. So it requires specific veterinary skills, first of all, for blood sampling, but also for interpretation of the results. So, are there any questions? I'm going to end the presentation and return to the screen.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. However, as we have two guests, I don't know if someone has question or some comments to make. Then just raise the hand maybe. All in all, I think it was really clear. It was a really interesting introduction also. I will surely send this to our professors at the agricultural school, even for the students. For me, the introduction was really interesting in fact that there were basics that should be applied on the farms, but I don't think that it is applied as it should, as the water disponibility and so on. My impression is always that, for water, it's a really big topic, because I don't think if farmers are really aware of it, that you can change some basics and have a great effect in the end.
Well, that's mainly the help this metabolic tool can bring, because in that discussion, the farmer don't believe that his cows drink too less. But when you take the blood and you can prove it by blood sampling, then they mainly are convinced. All right. Now we see it in the cow, so I have to do something, and we see it that farmers start doing something after they have performed such a metabolic scan.
Yeah.
That they're starting to take actions.
Yeah.
And before practitioners could mention it several times, but it got in one ear and got out the other ear, and nothing changed.
That's
so this metabolic scan is, so this is one thing for the metabolic scan, but it helps, and we see that now about 1,000 to 1,500 dairy farms a year are using this metabolic scan as a tool to do as on regular base, to see where they stand. It's a high level picture, huh? It's a very high level picture, but because it's high level, they have an idea. I'm rather good, or I'm running a risk on some levels, and I have to take actions to minimize that risk.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, because it should also be very interesting. I don't know how it is in your country, but in Luxembourg, we are not really practicing the, how to call it, action plans for preventing something on the farms. So they are only taking actions if the cows need something, but action plans for preventing some diseases or so.
Yeah.
In Luxembourg, it's not the case that the veterinarians are already working with farmers together to.
Yeah. But it's also something that needs to improve in Belgium as well.
Yeah.
We started it. And some dairy farmers are starting to work with it, but it's not something that is already very common.
No.
And we see also that a lot of farmers, they wait until they get clinically sick cows, but those clinically sick cows, they are the top of the iceberg.
Yeah.
When you have clinically sick cows, you have a big amount of subclinically sick cows, which don't show anything, but they are producing under the levels.
Yeah.
And that is very important to show them. And the only way to show them is yeah, by performing such a metabolic scan
Yeah.
and try to convince them, yeah, when you take action on this level, you maybe you will gain even 2 or 3 liters on average a day in production. So they can gain a lot if they act and do something, and it's not about big infrastructure works. It's just about yeah, putting in an extra drinking trough.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the cubicles, maybe add some cubicles, add some space, or yeah, or get rid of some cows that are, yeah, not anymore at a level to keep them. So yeah,
Yeah, therefore, a lot of farms have big potential on that. But I think the biggest challenge is really to get the farmers aware of it, where they lose really money, because it could
yeah,
be easy changes to be made to gain liters in milk, but they are really not aware of it or don't want to hear it. I don't know, but I think that is really also in future now a big challenge to get them aware of it, and then yeah, they can use such as the metabolic samples or something like that. But if they don't want to change anything, then you can talk to them every day, but they won't
yeah,
change it.
yeah,
Okay.
and then you need to try to give them a proof of what is going wrong, and when
Yeah.
they see, and that's something weird that when you take blood samples, farmers will believe what the blood says.
Okay. Yeah, they have it on the sheet, black on
Yeah,
white.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but at least then they believe, because if you're only talking to them, they don't believe it.
No, no, no.
Okay.
They will even more believe blood samples than sensors.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
I
like
censor
that.
data because they think, yeah, computers, they can measure
Yeah,
it
you
wrong,
can.
and
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, great. Then, yeah, thank you very much for your time, for your presentation.
no
I
problem.
will stop the recording and publish it on our website then after that.